Have you ever wondered why the end of your grip is tapered in the way that it is? It seems kind of strange given that your pinky on your left hand is obviously the smallest finger on your hand, and that's the fattest part of the grip. Why do you think they designed it that way? And it's also interesting because there's some grips out there that are actually reverse tapered, so that this part of the grip is actually the smallest part of the grip, and it actually gets fatter as you go down the grip where your right hand would be. So who's right and who's wrong, and why did they do this in the first place? Well, it's a great question, and incredibly enough, it's an incredibly important part of your golf swing when you understand it. So if you don't understand why this is tapered the way that it is, and you don't feel like this tapered part is actually helping your golf swing, you're going to start to understand why you probably can't get into those tour quality impact positions, and why you can't pick up the club head speed you think you should have, even though you're swinging at it as hard as you can. So let's take a look at this. First thing I want you to understand is one simple piece of math that we're going to work with. For every ½ inch in club length that you go up, so let's say from your 7-iron to your 6-iron, your 6-iron is probably about a ½ inch longer than your 7-iron, you're going to, on average, pick up about 2 miles an hour of club head speed, just for the sake that the club is a ½ inch longer. Simple enough, right? So for every club in the bag that we go up, for every ½ inch, we can use that as some very simple, rough estimates as to how much club head speed you're going to pick up. That's why the whole concept of a single length set of irons just simply can't work. By the time you get to your longer irons, you can't pick up enough club head speed to make up for the difference. So that's why your clubs all have to be a little bit longer than the other. That and the combination of the loft is what allows you to hit the ball further with a longer club. So we need that extra ½ inch per club to help us hit the ball a long ways. But if you're not using the club correctly, and I'm going to show you why in a second, you're going to not take advantage of that extra ½ inch, and you're going to not be able to hit the ball as far as some skinny guy like myself who hits the ball a long ways without a lot of effort. That's because I'm using the club the way it was designed to be used. So let's take a look at this. The one thing I want you to understand is that, and I've talked about this in other videos, is that the golf swing is predominantly left-hand dominant, okay? And so when you start to think of it that way, you're going to start to understand how things fall into place the way that they do. The problem is most golfers are right-handed, and they're right-hand dominant, and they try to swing the golf club right-handed, and stuff starts falling apart really fast when you do that. So here's what's going to happen. And here, tell me if this is you. You come into impact and you look like this, where you're scooping and flipping it, and your right hand is causing your left wrist to break down. As this happens, what you're essentially doing is you're making the pivot point on your club further down the shaft. Whereas the way that I'm swinging with using my left hand to control the club, I'm taking every inch of the shaft and utilizing it to generate speed because my club is pivoting from up here instead of down here. So now you can imagine if I'm trying to force the club to release with my right hand, I've effectively made my iron 4 inches shorter. You're not going to be able to make up 4 inches of speed no matter how hard you flip it with your right hand. You have to use the taper in the grip and use the last 3 fingers in your left hand to allow the club to release with a lot of speed, and the club should almost feel like it's trying to slip out of your hands, and the taper is what's allowing you to hold on to it. If it wasn't tapered and you swung the club correctly, the club would actually fly out of your hands. It'd be very hard to hold on to. So that's why your grips are tapered. So now, in the next part of this video, I'm going to show you 2 simple drills that are going to help you learn how to understand and take advantage of this leverage piece of the swing to get a lot more speed with a lot less effort. Alright, so now that we got the concept of why this grip is tapered this way and why you need to use it the way that it was designed to get a lot of speed without a lot of effort, I'm going to give you the 2 drills that we need to work on. So the first one is, I want you to take the club, and just grip it with your last 3 fingers. Literally just hold the club with your last 3 fingers. Take the thumb and forefinger off, and what this is going to do is it's going to force you to stop pushing against the shaft with your left thumb, because again that's going to move that pivot point down the shaft. We want that to be as far up the shaft as we can, so right at the very end is where the majority of our grip pressure is going to come from. So what I want you to do, last 3 fingers, and start making little swings back and through, and as you're doing this, keep the thumb and forefinger off the shaft and start seeing how the club wants to and needs to turn over and rotate kind of around the butt of the club. And as you're doing this, one of the things I talk about in the clinics and my lessons all the time, a good way of thinking about it is rolling the knuckles under. So you're taking your knuckles on your left hand, and as you're flattening out that wrist, you're rolling the knuckles under to exaggerate it to where you could see your fingernails. That's going to be a hook if you're doing it right, but it's a good exaggeration, especially if you're used to flipping it with your right hand. This is going to get you into a flat left wrist position, rotating it so I can see my fingernails, and releasing it all the way around on the left hand side. So that's the first drill, and you need to practice this as much as humanly possible. It looks incredibly simple, but what you're going to find is that you have very little coordination probably in your left hand, and especially when you take that thumb off of there. And you may even have a little bit of a weak left hand because we don't use it all the time. So just keep working on this drill, and just even hitting little half shots back and through. This alone is going to start giving you the feeling of how to get that club to work and release correctly. Okay, that's the first drill. The second drill is obviously got to put the right hand back on at some point, right? So we need the right hand on there. It does a lot of things for us, but what I want you to do is put the right hand on there and we open palm it at first. And what I want you to start doing is letting your hand come off. So now as we're working through and we're releasing the club, my right hand is actually tracing along with the club, but I'm letting it come off. So from face on, you can see that as my left hand is doing the work and my right hand is releasing off. Now what we want to start doing this, or transferring this into, is keeping that right hand on there longer and longer and longer, and I call this the VJ drill. So what we're going to do, you're going to come into impact. Now my fingers are on the club a little bit more, and I'm going to look like VJ or Phil Mickelson or Freddie Couples. These guys all release the club really, really well with their lead hand, and the trailing hand actually comes off, and that's why VJ looks like this. Hogan didn't understand this. That's why when they asked him about it, he said, well, I guess he just doesn't need it there. He had that part right, but Hogan thought you really needed to push through with the right side, and that's why he looked like this at impact. You look at the modern player who has a tremendous amount of club head speed these days. They release the club very aggressively and let that trailing hand come off, because that's all it's going to do with the trailing hand is slow it down, because the tighter you hold on with the trailing hand, the more your body has to come through with the release. The club can't move independently of your body to speed up, and it needs to. So when we let the right hand start coming off like VJ, now all of a sudden the club can speed up really fast, and you'll see my body is actually moving quite slow, but I've got a lot of speed. So that drill, as you start getting into this VJ position where you're letting that hand come off the club, combined with the first drill of starting to learn to use the left hand, the last three fingers in the left hand only, will start to get you into a perfect impact position and get you a tremendous amount of club head speed with very little effort.